All right, Jeff, why are you running to be the candidate in in Red Deer, Lacombe?
So I'm a United Church minister here in Red Deer and have been for 4.5 years now. And after a couple of years of being a minister, 2.5 years actually, I went on a retreat with a famed writer named Parker Palmer. And Parker Palmer is really known for his book, The Courage to Teach, that was written in the 1980s. And it's all about how you don't become a teacher for fame and fortune, you become a teacher because of a real in-depth calling. And he's a Quaker of the Christian tradition, and so writes out of the Christian tradition about vocational calls and where you're meant to be in your life. And so I went on this retreat for young activists and leaders in the state of Wisconsin, and while I was there, really got a calling to step into politics. And then I bought Parker Palmer's newest book called Healing the Heart of Democracy, that said, if we're going to save democracy from the cynicism and the polarization and the divisiveness, people need to stand up and run with authenticity and integrity and vulnerability to speak their truth clearly, even if they don't have a hope in winning. And again, this was about 1.5 years ago that I took out paperwork as soon as I got home from that retreat to become the Liberal candidate. At the time, I didn't think I'd have a hope in heck of winning, but as the momentum keeps building and as I'm hearing from more and more people that they're undecided, that they're ready for change, I think we might just be able to do this thing this time around. So I'm proud and honored to be the Liberal candidate, and I think that together, if we all work together, we can make a huge difference and form a new, more hopeful vision for the future.
Well, another question we have is proportional representation. It's been a growing issue in this election, in the last few actually. What is your position on proportional representation and why?
So I was approached a couple months ago by someone from Fair Vote Canada, and I've been following Fair Vote Canada for years. I'm on their emailing list and follow their Facebook group and all that sort of stuff. And they asked me to sign a pledge that had 5 questions on it, and I was happy to do that. They are specifically looking at proportional representation. There's mixed member proportional representation, there's ranked ballots, there's all kinds of different ways that it could be done. The NDP has a very particular bent. They specifically want mixed member proportional representation. The Liberal Party has committed that if they win and form government, this will be the last first past the post election. Now, electoral reform is a really complicated thing. Even mixed member proportional representation has the risk of having a ballot that is a page long with 60 or 70 names on it. So I'm not exactly sure what form of electoral reform I personally advocate for. I know the Liberal Party wants to call a commission within 6 months of forming government and have new legislation within 18 months of forming government. So I'm all for proportional representation in one way or another. My biggest concern is that if we get a proportional representation system, and say in the province of Alberta, the Liberal Party gets 5 members of Parliament, my concern would be those 5 members of Parliament will be lawyers from Edmonton and Calgary, and it'll really prevent local folk, rural voices from being heard in Parliament. So that's my big concern, and I just want to make sure that when we do proportional representation, it doesn't make it proportional for certain groups and make it less proportional for other groups. So absolutely, I encourage electoral reform, how it'll look. I think all Canadians need to get involved in that decision, and that's why the Liberal Party wants to do a commission and really make sure we get this thing right, because of course it has absolutely huge impacts. The thing we forget is everybody is for proportional representation when they're losing, and when they get into power, they often change their mind. If you look at the provincial NDP, proportional representation has been one of their platform pieces for decades, and as soon as they were about to come into power in the last provincial election, they changed their tune on that and are no longer in favor of proportional representation provincially. So the Liberal Party has long been advocates for ranked ballots, and part of the reason for that is we're pretty much everyone's second choice. So hey, ranked ballot would be great because you'd have a Liberal government forever, but of course that wouldn't be justice, so it's making sure we do this right.
All right, I was at a local concert, some local bands, and I asked around a dozen random people and said, if you could ask the candidates anything you wanted, what would be the first thing you asked? And every single person asked me the same thing. They said, ask them about post-secondary education, about the cost, about subsidizing it.
Yeah.
What would you do to make post-secondary education more accessible to Canadians?
Well, and this question really, to me, highlights what the difference is between the NDP, the Conservatives, and the Liberal Party. Currently our education system, our post-secondary education system, is highly subsidized by the government. When you pay tuition, even though it's very high, it's only realistically about 30% of the cost. The government actually covers the other 70%. Post-secondary education is incredibly expensive. Now, the Conservatives favor a user pay system, so that if you're going to be going to university, you should have to pay for it. And then on the other hand of things, the NDP sometimes floats the idea of having a free education system, a free post-secondary education system. The challenge with that is you're not only subsidizing those who have a hard time paying tuition, you're also subsidizing those who are rich. It makes a blanket subsidization for anybody who wants to go to post-secondary education. What I really like about the Liberal plan and platform is that it recognizes that going to university or post-secondary education or college or an apprenticeship is a value-added thing that will get you a better job in the long run. But what the Liberal Party really seeks to do is target those who need help the most. So to create scholarships that are needs-based and merit-based. So if you work hard and you earn a scholarship rate, if you come from a family or you personally have a hard time paying for your tuition, those scholarships to do that. But those who do come from a wealthier background will be asked to pay their fair share. The idea is that there's equality where everyone is treated the same, or there's equity where we target those who need help and give them a chance to create a more system for everybody. So the Liberal platform on post-secondary education actually has not officially come out. It should be released in the next day or two. We did our costing platform and the expenses last Friday, and there was this conspicuous blank space for an as of yet announced thing, and that'll be the post-secondary education bit that'll come out in a couple of days.
All right. Now, in the last few years, we've had 16 scientific archives destroyed. They were never backed up onto an additional medium. Sciences fundamentally help our economy, and you yourself are a scientist. What would you do to revive and enrich the sciences in Alberta and Canada?
You know, the most heartbreaking thing about the closing of these research stations across the country, the most recent of which was in Lethbridge, an agricultural research station, is those papers that were destroyed are irreplaceable. Those are archival records, they're statistics. I know some folks were going into dumpsters to try and save as much of the data as possible down in Lethbridge, and it's heartbreaking to know that they've been lost. One of the key Liberal Party platforms is to unmuzzle scientists, to make sure that there's independence within the Canadian government. Our forebearers created all these checks and balances like the Parliamentary Budget Officer or the Commission on this or that or the other thing, and all of those have been either cancelled, had their funds completely removed to make them pretty much useless, taking away all the staff that are meant to do the checks and balances on the government. And the Liberal Party platform is to return those to independent organizations. One of our platform pieces is about creating a specific position, a science commissioner, whose job is to make sure that science is independent and not being held to the political will of who's ever in power at any particular point in time, and to reinvest in research and development, and to really reinvest in Canadian sciences. On a similar vein, there was the Canadian Lakes program that was cut, and all of the protected lakes were taken away pretty much overnight. And the Liberal Party platform is again to make sure that our land, our coastal waters, and our inland lakes are protected once again, to meet an obligation that we've signed on to as Canada that the Conservative government has been lagging on over the last decade. So to really renew Canada's place in the world as a science leader.
All right.
Evidence-based policy making is the most important thing too. So to use science in all the decisions that the Liberal Party makes, whether that's marijuana or something else, to use the evidence and rather than wedge issues to make policy.
Well, the first one to mention it on this series of videos. One last question.
Mm-hmm.
Why is Justin Trudeau the best leader to be Prime Minister?
I, as I mentioned before, signed up to be a Liberal candidate about a year and a half ago, when Justin Trudeau was pretty new as the leader of the Liberal Party. And I find him extremely optimistic and charismatic and hopeful for the future of our country, really focusing on how great our country is, but how we could even make it better. But this past spring, when the Liberals started to go down the polls and the attack ads started to stick, like a lot of Canadians, I started questioning him a little bit myself. Only this last summer, I've really had the chance to get to know Justin pretty well and meet him, half a dozen times or so, and actually spend a fair bit of time with him. And I've discovered a man who's deeply intelligent, who's very reflective, who's committed to running for politics for all the right reasons. He had always said as a young person he would never go into politics, but he felt a deep calling to do so, especially given this last Harper decade. And, the best thing about Justin Trudeau is he's not a one-man show. We often hear about Thomas Mulcair really whipping his caucus, or Stephen Harper being the one-man show and concentrating power in the Prime Minister's office. But what I love about Justin Trudeau is it's Team Trudeau. So his Economic Council has 16 people on it. Jean-Yves Duclos is a candidate in Quebec who's the Vice President of the Canadian Economic Association. Chrystia Friedland is the former editor of the Financial Times in New York, one of the world's most renowned financial magazines. Bill Morneau runs Canada's largest HR firm. These are just some of the economic voices that he has on his Economic Council. And it's the same with foreign policy and so on and so forth. So I'm really proud to be part of that team and that team approach to government. And they often say that the Prime Minister's office started concentrating power under Pierre Elliott Trudeau. He was the first Prime Minister to really concentrate power in that office and take away the power of the people and their members of Parliament. And it's continued successively through each government since then. It's interesting that it's his son, Justin Trudeau, who says he wants to return the power to the people and be a Prime Minister not of might, but of the people, and doing this together. And no matter where you are on the issues, to bring people together, make sure their voices are heard, and to create a constructive solution to the problems that face everyday Canadians.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. It was fun.